Hi guys, welcome to Will and One Arts. I'm Leslie, and today I'm going to work on a project that I've been wanting to do for quite a while now. Years and years ago, I made this painting of a girl in the field. It's a giant painting. I'll post it somewhere here. It's about a door-sized painting of just a simple girl in a field with a tree in the distance. Since doing dioramas, I wanted to turn this into a 3D painting. So that is what I'm going to work on today, and I hope you all enjoy. I started by cutting a box out on my laser cutter. I made a little hole for the battery compartment so I can easily turn it on and off. And then I added some fairy lights in. This will give me the option in case I want it backlit at times. And then I also cut out different size pieces of wood. This is where I'm going to make my hills on. Before adding the hill in, I'm going to paint the background a sunrise, just a simple sunrise. I'm making the hills by layering pieces of wood, adding a little space between each layer. That way I can fill those spaces in with, basically I'm using tinfoil and tissue paper. And then I'm going to paper mache the entire area. I think it kind of gives a little bit of a depth when looking at the shadow box diorama. I'm also adding varying green paints to my paper mache as I go. This is going to be the layer underneath where I add future grass and flowers, and that way if any parts are missing where I'm adding the grass, it'll be hard to tell because it's already painted green. Now I'm adding some PVA glue for the static grass. So guys, I learned that these static grass applicators are no joke. Be careful when you use one. I don't know if I did something odd, but I gave myself quite the shock and that wasn't so fun. So be careful when you use them. I'm adding varying shades of grass. I want it lighter where the sun's coming up in the background and then a darker grass in the foreground. I have my first layer of grass added and I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to work on the tree next. To make my leaves, I am getting some tissue paper and I'm painting it varying shades of green and yellow just because I want some different shades in my leaves. And then I'm going to let that dry. While my leaf paper is drying, I'm going to work on my tree. I cut this tree out on my laser cutter. And then to add texture, I'm going to do my typical tissue paper and glue paper mache style tree, where I add the tissue paper and glue all over the tree to give it some cool bark texture. And then after that dries and hardens, I'm going to add black paint for my first layer of paint on my tree. Now that layer of paint is dry, I'm going to do some dry brushing to bring out the texture. I'm dry brushing with white, gray, and brown paint. My leaf tissue paper is now dry, and I'm going to use this hole punch, a leaf-shaped hole punch, to cut out tons and tons and tons of leaves. To glue on my first layer of leaves, I'm using a paintbrush, some glue, and my leaves. I'm going to leave it for now, and I'm going to add it to my diorama, and then I'm going to add more leaves as needed because I need to get the feel for it in the diorama. Let's do that. I'm going to glue my tree in place on the diorama, and then I'm going to add a little extra paper mache to the area just to give a root area, widen up the trunk a little bit where it attaches to the ground. I took a picture of my girl in the painting and then roughly traced out her body just so I get the same layout as the painting, and then I cut that out on my laser cutter. I'm going to go with some of this pre-colored clay that I already have, just to kind of use it up. I am adding baking bond or clay adhesive so my clay will stick to the wood. Before I finish sculpting her, I'm going to add some paint. I'm not really a fan of the colored polymer clay. It kind of looks too plasticky. Now that the tree is in place in the diorama, I can fill those gaps up with adding some more leaves. All right, let's see if I can fix this color up some. Time to add some flowers. I brainstormed many different ways to add flowers to my diorama. I tried polymer clay, it just wasn't delicate enough for me. I thought about using faux flowers, but they weren't small enough. And then I decided to go ahead and make my own paper flowers. For my first flower, I am using a push pin or a flower pin. I painted the head of the pin a brown color because I wanted the inside of the flower or the middle of the flower to be brown. So I could get the same size petal for each flower. I used a flower-shaped hole punch. I punched a bunch of these flowers out and cut off the petals. Now this is tedious, but you can get yourself in a rhythm, and it actually wasn't bad at all. I just watched shows, or I was chatting with my son, and I was just making these. And then I'm dipping each petal in glue, and then I'm gluing them to the back of the pinhead. These flowers reminded me of echinacea or cone flowers. And I also made similar flowers in yellow, and they kind of reminded me of black-eyed Susans. For my next flower, I wanted to make a small flower that's going to be off in the distance. And what I did was I took another hole punch, a small hole punch, and made these teeny little circles. And then I took a flat pinhead this time, and I dipped the flat pinhead in glue, and then I just took the pinhead and dabbed it on the pieces of punched out paper. And this made a little teeny flower. And I made blue flowers, purple flowers, yellow flowers, and white flowers using the same method. To make my lupin or lavender style flower, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my string and I'm going to wrap it around the pin head until I get the size I want, and then I'm not worried about this part. I'm going to cut this part off. Then I'm going to just wrap it back down, and then I'm going to add a little glue just to keep everything in place. So when it dries, it's all one bit. And then I just tie it around in a simple knot and clip that end off. You can end it as such. And there's your flower. I like to trim it off a little bit long so I can take the last bit and kind of glue wrap it around. And then if you want to add some dark color, you just do the same. And you kind of thicken it up. In your diorama, that's going to look like a little lupin or lavender. Time to add all the flowers I made. To add a little variety, I'm also using some clump foliage, dried moss, as well as some taller static grass. These are I think they're called nail caviar, but little nail decor, and they look like teeny tiny little beads. And I'm using those in the distance to look like faraway flowers. And then I'm gonna also use flock that I made with cut up pieces of embroidery thread in different colors, and that will also look like flowers in the field. I'm gonna go ahead and add my girl in so I can get a feel for her in the field. And we're going to finish the shadow box off by adding a frame. And here it is. I am really happy with how it came out. I think it's a really pretty diorama. My daughter has the original painting hanging in her bedroom, and she asked to have this too, so I probably will put this up in her room at some point. I am really pleased with how it turned out. I think this was really fun to recreate an old piece of art and turn it into more of a 3D diorama. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out the final results.